In this session, we look at Ofsted and Inspection. We look quite briefly at what Ofsted is and its role, its function in England. We look at the kind of judgments it makes and why that is. And then lastly, we look at the preparations that GoTrain is making to be inspected. At the end of each slide, just click through to the next one and they should be self-explanatory. Of course, you can always go back and listen to a slide again. So first, let's look briefly at Ofsted. Ofsted, the word, stands for the Office for Standards in Education, Children's Services and Skills. Ofsted is the government's inspectorate, the government's regulator for services that care for children and young people. So, for example, local authority care services, foster services, adoption services, but also services that provide education and skills for learners of all ages. This includes preschools, nurseries, primary and secondary education, further education colleges, education provision, for example, within prisons, and of course, independent training providers such as GoTrain. Ofsted is also concerned with the quality and the effectiveness of careers guidance services. Ofsted is independent, it's impartial, and it reports directly to Parliament. Ofsted strategies make it clear that it aims to be a force for improvement through intelligent and responsible and focused inspection and regulation. It has as a stated goal that it wishes to achieve excellence in education and skills for learners of all ages and in the care of children and young people. Ofsted as an organisation carries out hundreds of inspections and regulatory visits in England every week. Most of its results are published online or available for any member of the public to read about any organisation or any provider. Ofsted inspections are governed by what's called an inspection framework. Then for further education and skills providers such as GoTrain, Ofsted inspectors also have what's called an inspection handbook. Within the framework and the handbook there are three types of visit. Firstly, a support and challenge visit very much focuses on exactly what it says, Ofsted providing both support and challenge to a provider. This is quite different to Ofsted providing a judgment about the effectiveness of a provider. During a support and challenge visit, it's quite low-key. A phone call is agreed, an exploratory phone call, and that's followed up with an on-site visit, again very much focused on improvement. That visit might lead to priority actions and timescales to achieve those actions, and those actions are then written down in a letter, which actually is not made public, but instead is sent to the provider and also to the Education Skills Funding Agency, the ESFA, which is the funding arm of the Department for Education. All new providers receive what's called a monitoring visit. At the moment, the government focuses on monitoring visits for new apprenticeship providers, but GoTrain, having received its first prime AEB contract in November 2017, is classified as a new provider, and therefore we do expect a monitoring visit at some point. Whilst the monitoring visit may be unannounced, normally it would be arranged through a phone call and then a visit by a number of inspectors in the following week. Those visits are very much focused on whether the organisation as a new provider is making sufficient or insufficient progress in terms of its journey towards quality and effectiveness for learners. Monitoring visits do have published reports, and actually that could be the end of it, or if there were significant concerns or worry about risk, Ofsted could recommend that a full inspection happens. GoTrain will receive a full inspection in any case, because all new providers are expected to receive a full inspection within 3 years of any new contract. So GoTrain is very likely to receive a full inspection by the end of August 2020. A full inspection will include multiple inspectors visiting multiple locations and using that inspection handbook over 2 days, perhaps 3 or even 4 days, to determine and make judgments about the effectiveness of the organisation. So, what kind of judgments does an Ofsted inspector make? Well, this slide reflects on a full inspection. You'll see on the left-hand side there are a number of bullet points which show the areas of an inspection handbook and therefore the judgments to be made. Ofsted would be concerned with the quality and the effectiveness of leadership and management, the quality of teaching, learning and assessment, the extent to which learners develop personally and their behaviour and welfare is improved, and their outcomes. There are also sections for specific types of programme. GoTrain delivers, as you expect, adult learning programmes, and so there would be a theme at the end about our delivery of adult learning programmes. If we were a provider which also delivered traineeships and apprenticeships, there would be a section called apprenticeships and a section called traineeships. Ofsted inspectors will make a judgment against each of those areas using the grading scale at the bottom of the screen. They will decide whether that area is outstanding, good, requires improvement, or inadequate. You will notice that safeguarding doesn't appear on the list. Safeguarding doesn't have its own area, but it is part of the leadership and management judgment. In other words, the leaders and managers keep learners safe. Once an inspector has done that, the inspection team will make a judgment about what's called the overall effectiveness of the organisation, and again a score between 1 and 4, outstanding to inadequate, will be given. If you look to the right hand side of the screen, you'll see there are a couple of examples of front pages of full inspection reports. The first one is Sandwell Metropolitan Borough Council, and you can see at the top of that page each of those judgment areas has judged to be good, and in the blue line across the top it says the overall effectiveness of that borough council has been judged to be good. If you have a look at the Learning and Enterprise College for Bexley report cover slightly above that, you'll see that some of those judgment areas differ. So leadership and management, for example, teaching, learning and assessment have both been judged to require improvement, but the personal development, behaviour and welfare judgment was good. So even though one of those themes had a good judgment, the blue line, the overall effectiveness, states requires improvement. So at the very core, the overall effectiveness judgment is the most important. In this slide, we reflect on why inspection is so important. Perhaps that's obvious, but there are three main reasons. First and foremost, inspection is about making a judgment of the quality and the effectiveness for our learners. Inspectors will be concerned in not just what we do, but actually to what extent is it done well, and most important, does it make any difference to the lives of our learners? So we may well do initial assessments and diagnostic assessment at the beginning of a learner's experience with us, but are we doing those effectively? Do we use the information that's held within them? We might be challenging learners around attendance and behaviour, supporting them to make sure they're there on time. But are we doing that effectively? Does that learner's attendance and behaviour improve over their 5 or 10 or 15 days with GoTrain? They'll be looking at the teaching and learning that happens in tutor rooms. Are we helping learners develop their knowledge, their skills, their competency? Or are we just giving them enough information to write down the right answer? They'll make a judgment about the quality and, most important, the impact for our learners. They'll also look at what happens to our learners when they leave GoTrain. Do they go to positive destinations in terms of further learning or perhaps into work? Do we know where they go? They'll question why we don't know if we're not able to say. And that builds to the second part. They'll also want to look at how well leaders and managers understand the strengths and the weaknesses of GoTrain's delivery. They'll want to know about whether we have identified things that need improving, whether we have good plans for those to improve, whether those plans are effectively delivered, and therefore whether those improvements take place. All in the context of the quality and effectiveness for our learners. And lastly, we can't ignore the fact that GoTrain operates in a competitive and commercial landscape, that every college contract or AEB contract opportunity is fiercely competed for by providers both local and national and even overseas. Inspection outcome, therefore, is really important to GoTrain because the results of an inspection for us can determine some of the funding opportunities that we're able to bid for. So, building on the overview about Ofsted and Inspection, What is GoTrain doing to prepare? Well, at the heart of this is what we call a self-assessment report, which is where a thorough and robust self-evaluation of the organisation's strengths and weaknesses are made. This is an annual exercise, and it is formally reviewed on a quarterly basis, as well as more informally on a monthly basis. Staff surveys, learner surveys, employer surveys, data, qualitative assessment, internal reports and analysis all form part of that rigorous self-assessment. The self-assessment report, or SAR, is a document that Ofsted inspectors will want to look at and use as part of their inspection. They'll use that to part of their test as to whether leaders and managers understand the strengths and the improvement areas in the organisation. In the previous slide, we talked about the importance of then building on that understanding by having improvement plans. And we have what we call a QIP, Quality Improvement Plan. This sets out those improvement actions. Again, inspectors during an inspection would use and reference our QIP. A summarised copy of the self-assessment report and quality improvement plan will shortly be sent out to all staff. What else is GoTrain doing? Well, at the heart, this is about the experience and the quality and the effectiveness of engagement we have with our learners. So the ISP model, I, information, advice and guidance, the S, the skills provision, and the P, progression into learning or work, is absolutely at the core of how GoTrain sees that effective journey for our learners. Initiatives such as the 5 employability pillars, so motivation, interpersonal skills, overcoming setbacks, self-esteem and time management, are embedded in the things that we give to learners through the teaching and learning with tutors. We recognise this is about improving their outcomes, but also the quality and the effectiveness of that which happens for them. We've got the continuous improvement team, which leads on curriculum design, shaping, observations of teaching, learning and assessment, monitoring activities such as behaviour and attendance and welfare, etc., safeguarding. We've got safeguarding procedures that were reviewed in June 2018 and tightened. So we now have level 3 trained centre designated leads, and we also have a designated safeguarding lead for the organisation in central office, Steve Thacker. So those procedures are now quite tight, and the policy sets out very clearly about escalating and recording concern. Staff are trained in safeguarding, they're trained in radicalisation, they're trained in prevent, and therefore the importance of bringing those things together are all essential in keeping our learners safe. We survey our learners, we survey them at the end of each week, and all centres should do this in terms of their satisfaction about the key elements that we have delivered for them. But we also survey them at the beginning through the data capture process and at the end in terms of those employability pillars. And we know repeatedly our learners are making significant progress against those 5 employability pillars during their time with us. That all adds weight that learners achieve positive outcomes and that some of what we do is effective. Similarly, we have staff surveys, employer surveys, and again that feedback is hugely important part of our process of self-assessment. We have a really rigorous focus on the quality of learners' paperwork. That's not just about compliance with the funding rules. That's also about learners understanding why they're with us. It's about their workbooks, them having pride in their workbooks, us having focus on handwriting, giving them developmental feedback in which they can improve and add to their knowledge over their time with us. We have staff training, both mandatory and development opportunities, and those are a really important part of ensuring our staff are equipped with the skills to ensure that our learners have effective journeys. And finally, in a very micro level, we also have a detailed 48-hour plan that will be triggered when we receive that phone call from inspection. Lastly, this slide just looks at what can we all do. What are those little things, those little differences that each of us can make? Of course, at first, it's about that continued focus on our learners. The GoTrain ISP model. So are we all living that in the way that we engage with our learners, we're supporting with them, and are we thinking about each of those stages, or are we only really thinking about our bit of them? At the heart of that, it's about the quality and effectiveness of what are we doing. Are we doing it because we do it, or are we doing it because it's making a difference? How do we know it's making a difference? We can all take responsibility. We all have responsibility for promoting modern British values. Ofsted inspectors will be absolutely certain to question whether we are doing that and to look at how effectively we are doing that. And we can't ignore the fact that modern British values is about helping people have the skills and the confidences to resist the temptation towards radicalisation. We can all promote GoTrain's 5 employability pillars. This isn't about just tutor responsibilities. Whatever our role, the employability pillars are about helping our learners develop those 5 core skills that every employer looks for. One of those is time management. That's about our learners being reliable and turning up on time. So again, whatever our role, we can each have a major focus on learner attendance, learner punctuality, and learner readiness to start and their engagement in our work. This isn't about, again, tutors just doing that on their own. Every single member of staff can help achieve improvement in learner attendance, punctuality, and engagement. Lastly, each of us, whatever our role, we've all got a personal opportunity and responsibility to ask for support and to make sure we get it. That could be within centres or within central office teams, or from centres to central office teams, or the other way around. So don't forget, we have a continuous improvement team. Ask for support. They're there to try to help us improve the quality and the effectiveness of teaching, learning and assessment, of personal development, behaviour welfare, of outcomes for our learners. We've got a quality and compliance team that's there to help and provide support in terms of getting paperwork right, and getting paperwork right first time. That isn't just about compliance with audit. It's because each file needs to be an accurate reflection of that learner's journey, with learning goals, objectives, and the learner understanding why they're there and what they're getting out of the experience. So asking for support and getting support is absolutely crucial. Ofsted inspection will happen for GoTrain, whether that be a monitoring visit or a full inspection visit or both over the next few months and certainly before August 2020. The organisation's preparing for that. We welcome the inspection and we want to all make sure that we collectively work together to give a tremendous outcome for both for GoTrain but also for our learners. So this is the final slide of this particular deck about Ofsted inspection. Please go back to any slide and recap on any knowledge you feel you'd like to kind of look over again. Thank you.